Welcome back to my C10 build. Today we're going to be going over the steering gears replacement and bringing you up to date on that. This was another one of those things where wasn't really sure if this was the right idea, but I've already taken about 400 pounds off the front end of it. And I'm also a little concerned about the RPMs and running the big old double pulley pumps, and so trying to take some of the, looking at the some of the other drains on the motor. These pulleys and pump and bracket and stuff weigh over 20 pounds themselves, and then the steering box is a little heavier than that. So want to point out a few things on the steering box. You can see how on this there's a lot more to the pump, or to the gears, with the pump on top of it. So if you're looking at manual steering and wondering what fits and what doesn't, let me walk over here, show you what the manual unit looks like. I could have got a used one. There was plenty around, but I decided to go with just a remanufactured one. Wanted to make sure, but there we go. So you can see the obvious thing is there's no pump on it. Also visually, there's only 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, versus the power has 4 on it. So when I was looking at this and trying to make this decision, it was really, none of the pictures looked the same. I was having a hard time referencing the parts. If you look these up on, Rock Auto or AutoZone, they only list 1 pump, and it ranges from 1966 to, on one of them it said up to 1991. I did a little more work on it and found that they had 2 different types. There's the Saginaw type, and then there's a newer different type, and don't really know if they look that much different. There was also I had a lot of questions about the coupler, and again, it's really hard to find this information. For either I'm not looking in the right space or calling it the right thing, but these couplers, rag joints, there's different names for them. On most of the sites, they only showed 1. On one site, I found 3 different ones with 3 different part numbers. And so I kept digging on that. I didn't want to have everything torn apart and then not be able to find the right part. And so what I eventually figured out was they have on the splines that come out of here, they have a 17 spline and a 25 spline. As far as the rag joint being different, it's not. The material is the same, whether it's power steering or manual. You just have to have the right coupler to fit the steering box. So in my case, I'm kind of hoping they're the same, but if they're not, I'll just let this coupler go with this steering box. I already have somebody that's interested in it. They're buying the whole setup, so they're going to convert a manual to power, and then I'm doing the reverse. And if I need a different spline, then I'll just order the new spline. There was also a huge range in prices. Some of them had these, down around the, where you just buy the rubber part and rebuild it for like $10. Most of the rag joints are like 25, 30. And then one of the sites I looked at was like 60. And so there's a big price range. Anyway, I don't want to do too long on the video. Just kind of want to get to the point. The other questions I had was about, getting it lined back up. And so this one, the steering lock is still in the column, and so the wheels are straightforward. The pitman arm is going to be where the pitman arm goes. The only thing that I have to look at now when I put the new pump in is whether that shaft is centered. And so I took the new one. Also, I don't mean to chase around different directions, but the manual has about 6 1/4 turns lock to lock, where the power steering has 4 1/2, and then the newer quick ratios have like 3 1/2. So they marked this let me show you and mark this on the case and the drive, but I wouldn't trust this. And so I spun this, you know, both directions to make sure that where I'm lined up is already pretty close to being in the middle of the drive. And so if I install it as it sits, and just line the pitman arm up where it, you know, it can only go on so many slots, but I'll get the closest one to that. And then before I tighten anything up, I will check the steering wheel itself and make sure I have the proper lock to locks. So let's jump back over to the install, or actually I should say the uninstall was really the difficult part. I didn't have any trouble getting the rag joint apart. This is, from what I can tell, this is the factory original from 1977. This was the first bolt, this one right here. This is the first bolt that I found on the truck that was metric. Everything else has been American thread so far. And so this needs to come all the way out. This is a 12mm bolt, and it needs to come all the way out of there because there's a divot in the shaft for that bolt to ride in. And so that has to come completely out of there. I thought this might be jammed up, but it wasn't. I just reached in there with a Wonder Bar and gently pried this up, and as you can see, it comes right up. So this was not any issue. It will not come up far enough to disengage. It only comes up so far, and so it'll come loose when I finish pulling the gearbox itself. The other difficulty was in getting the pitman arm off. And so underneath here, this is disconnected now, but that was a chore. I ended up having to use a pretty significant breaker bar to get that loose. And then your local auto parts store has a pitman arm puller, and the AutoZone, O'Reilly's, these guys usually loan these out for free. So you need the pitman arm. This one here, this particular one, if I can zero in on a little bit, you can see the legs have really thick jaws on them. And on this particular truck, it was really hard to get that in between the frame. And so it was pretty tight up in there. It wanted to pull it out kind of crooked. And so you have to keep, there we go, sorry about that. You have to keep, you know, loosening it back up and tapping that jaw on there so that it pulls down straight. Also, the tool itself has been beat up a little bit, so I had to do a little cleaning on the threads and stuff to get it to work. But it will come off of there. It does fight you a little bit, but again, this was the original from 1977. So hopefully that's all good. The steering coupler is going to be whatever it is. It'll either work or it won't, but it's not the end of the world. That I can get a replacement for it easy in a day or two. The big takeaway on this was, you know, obviously I don't have fenders and all of that stuff in the way. This would really be a chore if you were trying to do it, you know, on your already running truck. You know, and the easiest way then would be obviously jack up the corner and pull the tire off and come at it from the side. But if you're doing a restore or a rebuild and you have everything disassembled, it wasn't too bad. I've got about an hour into it right now, and most of that was just because I'm trying to, you know, learn, you know, where everything goes. I don't want to damage anything that putting it back together. So hope this helps. Like I said, to me it was hard trying to figure out what went where, but they only made, you know, the two pumps. And then there's no way to know what your actual coupler is going to be until you pull it off of there. There didn't seem to be, you know, it was this at this point, or, you know, from this year to this year it was this. I don't know. I don't know why they have the different splines. I just know that there's two different ones. So hope that helps. My suspension guy is coming over, or my spring guy is coming over tonight. I am still doing the working out some stuff on the springs. My new wheels are going to be here tomorrow. I'm putting a massive tire under this thing, so I'll be moving the springs and everything in to line up with the frame rail. The new wheels are 14 inches wide. I'm going to run an 18-inch wide tire, and they'll set about an inch off of the frame rail. So shocks and everything's getting moved inboard, and I'll show that in some detail. But that's the next step. We'll get the steering fixed, then we'll come back and start working on the rear end. And I'll be loading it up so we can see what's happening with the ride height and stuff as we do that. And I'll cover the parts and pieces and show you how I'm moving all of that inboard and keeping it low at the same time. So thanks for watching.